Take it away, Stan.
Okay, this is the July 14th meeting of the Central Florida Computer Society, and we are still Inc., although Mike will tell you the status of a dissolution, and I will turn it over to Mike at this point. Thank you for all the work you've done on this, Mike.
And thank you for the many years of your support for Central Florida Computer Society.
Absolutely.
Okay. So most of you that have been here before have been following us over the last 6 months when we've been discussing what direction do we want to go with the Central Florida Computer Society as a not-for-profit corporation. And it was the decision of the board of directors that we just did not have the volunteers necessary to serve as our officers. And it was getting very difficult to operate legally as a corporation. And I will bring you up to date on what has happened as of the July 1st meeting of the board. Okay, let's get over here on that screen and let's hit the right arrow. There we go. Okay, so on July 1st, the board of directors held to consider the resolutions necessary to dissolve the corporate structure of the Central Florida Computer Society, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation in the state of Florida and under the IRS regulations for a charitable not-for-profit corporation. The board had previously determined that they had the authority to take the dissolution actions as there were no, quote, members entitled to vote, unquote, in accordance with our corporation's bylaws, which linked membership to the status of each member's paying dues, which were no longer being collected. And we also were not following who was a member, who wasn't a member, because we weren't sending out dues notices, and it was very difficult to establish who could vote, even if that provision were waived. So I know it's fine print, but on the 1st of July, the resolution was considered, and it is a resolution of dissolution of the Central Florida Computer Society, Inc. The whereases are all summarized up here. It references the June Board of Directors meeting notifying our membership in accordance with the dissolution article of our bylaws. It does reference the no membership entitled to vote based on the suspension of dues, and that the Board of Directors had the authority to consider this. And if approved, it outlined the steps to terminate the affairs of the corporation. And if approved, it authorized the president and secretary to implement the resolution, including all claims, liabilities, and expenses to terminate the affairs of the corporation and dissolve. The resolution to dissolve CFCS Inc. was passed unanimously by the 4 directors who are currently in office and present at that board of directors meeting. And you can see their signatures on the document. And the only thing we have to do at this point, Stan has got a corporate seal that he has to apply to it. And then this gets filed with the state of Florida. So we say that we are, did I hear a question? Oh, okay. So we say that we are executing that resolution in accordance with the articles of dissolution. So most corporations, when they dissolve, various different states that they're in, actually have an articles of dissolution, and it is required by the state of Florida to submit. That basically says, what did you do? Who are you? What did you do in order to do this? And then what are you going to do with your assets, especially with a 501c3? And then file the articles of dissolution with the state. And on the date that the articles of resolution are signed and filed, 9th basically says the corporation has terminated its affairs and ceases to exist. So at the moment, the previous resolution gave authority to the president and the secretary to carry out the items that are listed. In red, you can see that one of our key items is that we do have a treasury and that we do have to divest ourselves of that treasury. And because we're a 501c3, that treasury has to go to nonprofit entities. And we discussed an educational entity, which would be a public school or an organization that has scholarships for technology. One of our directors has recently suggested that MOAA, which is the Military Officers Association of America, does do scholarships for technology for various high school and college students. So we're considering that. There is also a faith-based tech center in Orlando, and they gather equipment, refurbish it, and then make it available for charitable purposes, not any particular faith keyed to it. So even though they're faith-based, it is still it meets the requirements. We've also considered making a donation to STUG, and they've been very close to the things that we're doing, as you just finished watching the STUG and the CFCS Windows SIG, and we want to keep that relationship going. And so we
Mike,
Yep, go ahead.
I probably have not mentioned this before, but STUG has a very active refurb group, and they've given away thousands and thousands of computers to education and people who need them and so on. I can
Great.
send you some more information. So that's something I would like you to also consider.
Yep. Well, we can donate it without designating it, or if STUG would like us to designate it, we can do that. We can just make a general, say to your general fund, to STUG's general fund, and they can determine what they want to do with it. Or if STUG would prefer us that we designate it for that program, we could probably do that too.
Yeah, they do keep separate.
Okay. And we spoke to Judy Toulour during the board of directors meeting, and she told us that the APCUG has a fund that they earmark for miscellaneous expenses for small user groups and for charitable purposes, and that if we divide as equally as possible to the first three and wind up with some unallocated balance at the end, then that they would be glad to accept the donation. So they're fourth on our list. So it basically, if you read ninth, which says the corporation has terminated its affairs and ceases to exist, hasn't happened yet. We're in the process of doing that, but on the date that it is signed by Stan Wallner and Mark Schulman and submitted to the state of Florida is the date that the corporation doesn't exist anymore. Okay, let's get back over here. So in order to do this process since January, we've been following a suggested roadmap for dissolution, which came from various sources, including AI, which was very helpful researching how a corporation, especially a corporation not-for-profit, does dissolve. And then verifying all of the things that were there, it has been very helpful. And as we track through sections 1 through 5, which are complete, then each of the items in that roadmap were highlighted. So I'm starting here essentially with July 1st Board of Directors meeting, which we had the agenda. We went through the old new business. We reviewed everything, including this roadmap. We discussed the post-dissolution resolution tasks, and we also discussed CFCS as a social group if the resolution was passed. So the outcome essentially was the vote for the dissolution resolution, and then the vote of the board to approve the articles of dissolution, and then our post-resolution tasks, which I'm tracking below. So everything that's here has in fact been approved. Oops, let's keep going. Oh, I said I was going to actually go to that. So let me switch to it. And I need to Alt-Tab. Okay, so I now am on that section of the roadmap. So we have at this point appointed the president and secretary for carrying out the articles of dissolution. A committee has been appointed to support the articles of dissolution as outlined. I'm the chairman of that committee, and I will be working to advise our president, Stan, and our secretary, Mark, of the actions that are in this roadmap and provide any information or research as I can in carrying out those actions. At the moment, Stan, as acting treasurer and president, is responsible for dispersing the final expenses, and it was decided by the board of directors that we would be paying APCUG dues in advance through 2027. We are going to file a fictitious name filing in the state of Florida for the Central Florida Computer Society because we found out that just having a corporation list you in the state of Florida's name directory or fictitious name directory and does not actually set up a fictitious name. So when the corporation ceases to exist, Central Florida Computer Society as a name would be free for grabs. So our intent is to file the fictitious name prior to actually signing the resolution of the articles of dissolution and submitting them and have that in place. And we will continue operations then as a social group using that name. Expenses for advertising fictitious name. It was suggested several of the weekly newspapers to keep the expenses down. At the moment, we have no creditors' claims, but if any were to appear, they have to take care of that. And we have to distribute the assets, as we said, we're continuing to work on that. When all the funds are dispersed and fees for the various filings are taken care of, at least those checks, and apparently we have to wait for those checks to actually clear the bank, then we can close the bank account out. So it's a sort of a catch-22, which comes first, the bank account closing or the submission of the articles of dissolution with its filing fee paid. So we'll have to figure out how that date correlates with the date that the bank gets closed. We have to file the final IRS tax return. It's either a long form 990 or a 990EZ, which with Schedule N, which is in essence makes that final filing easy. It's just a checkbox that you check and say the corporation has dissolved. So that makes it easy. Stan has already closed out the post office box with all mail being forwarded to his address. So any correspondence that's come in can be acted upon. We have Mark Schulman, our secretary, charged with filing the articles of dissolution, working on the fictitious name. We want to store and maintain corporate records for the mandated 3 years. So everything that we have will probably go ahead and scan in. Stan has just renewed our Google Drive storage capability so that we can store and file on Google Drive what's necessary. And yesterday we were talking about, if I got the name correct, Huey, it's called the Wayback Machine. And the Wayback Machine actually makes anything that's on the web available in previous years, months, days, whatever, as a website on the day that the Wayback Machine archives it. So we can actually take CFCS.org and we can make sure that it's archived, and then all of the information about the Computer Society that ever appeared on our website should be available to be recovered. And once that project has been verified, it's my intent to archive that link for those back years and put that on the new site, which I'll talk about a couple bullets down, but just have that link there so that anybody that wants to go back and look at our history can do that. The only thing we have to do then is find out what actual paper records we have to keep. And we do have copies of our original corporate charter. And I know somewhere there is actually a book of stock that was issued when the corporation was first created. So that's paper, and it'll probably hang on to that somewhere. We will notify APCUG of the eventual dissolution and that we're continuing as a user group and will maintain our membership. Between Mark Schulman and myself now, as secretary, we're contacting the existing website host for CFCS.org to make transfer arrangements to the APCUG host service provider. And Judy says that this is a service that they offer user groups if they don't have their own host. Our intent is to try to preserve CFCS.org, but if necessary, it could be CFCS.apcug.org. So we'll have to see how this transfer actually winds up going on. And as I said, we'll have a landing page, a welcome paragraph of who we are, what we do, a link to the Wayback Machine articles of the previous website in its condition as it was when it closed down in prior years. And then we have started a Discord bulletin board system, which I would like to keep going as SysOp. And we'll have a link that one would click there to take them to that if they wish to do so. Okay, operations as a social group. We're basically doing what we would be doing as a social group right now. So we're in the transition phase. We are essentially, I'm going to jump down, doing a monthly meeting, which we're doing right now. We are going to continue the window SIG with Huey as the SIG leader, should he choose to retain that function. We are going to keep our tech SIG going on the 4th Tuesday of the month with Stan Walter as the SIG leader, and I will continue the Discord BBS going with myself as SysOp. We'll form a committee. The committee initially will consist of volunteers, so it'll be up to the volunteers if they wish to be on that committee. But the initial invites are to the existing board of directors and the current SIG leaders. So I've covered who they are. And any other motivated members of CFCS, if you're listening to us now, you're invited to join the committee so you can help direct traffic. And I will set up a channel on the Discord BBS for coordination and communication among those committee members, with it open for anybody to view and comment. So it will be open, free and open discussion. And I think, let me go back. Here we go. Okay. Yep, we're open for discussion. So I'm going to close that out. Let me stop sharing my screen. And we're open for questions or comments. Stan? Comments?
Well, it's pretty much what we were doing before, and since we were not able to gather the number of directors needed to continue as the operation as a 501(c), I think it's a excellent solution to the problems we were having.
Huey?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks to you, Mike, and your organizational attributes of putting all of this together has been fantastic. And, you know, CFCS will function basically as it has without all of the things that we need people to run. We'll still be CFCS, and it's a lot better than what a lot of the groups are doing. So I think we're in good shape, and thank you so much for all your work, and Stan and the rest of the board members as well. And Stan, thanks for all of your years of holding it together as president of the group without having a replacement.
Stan, do you now have the record for the longest term in office as president?
I'm sure I do. 2019 was the beginning of this stint.
With Huey having had it for a number of years, and I had it for a number of years.
Yeah.
Stephen has his hand up. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. I thought I was just going to get educated about computers, Mike. You were terrific. Is this recorded, Huey?
Yes.
Man, I am going to, I'm going to make a copy of this one for another organization I've got. You have really done a wonderful job putting this together and explaining it to make it so easy to understand. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm going to give acknowledgement to AI, not that they care, but let's just think about it. I mean, has it been a full year now that AI has been announced and made available to the public? When did ChatGPT first come out?
November of 22.
22. Okay, so a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. the advances in what AI has been able to research and have all that information available to them still boggles my mind. If I had asked this question of AI a full year ago, it had been a jumble of responses, and I don't think it would have locked things in. But when I started in January asking these questions, mostly of Google Bard, and then it became Gemini, and then it was Bing. What did they call themselves? Bing something. But they became Copilot, and both of those gave me very good specific recommendations. Pulled information in from the state of Florida, pulled information from the Internal Revenue Service. I don't know where else and just general information that attorneys might advise, even though they always gave, the proviso that would say, be sure to contact an attorney who specializes in this. But we haven't had to, because we've met every requirement that the state of Florida requires, and I believe we will meet every requirement that the IRS requires. So all of this, even the verbiage of some of these documents, were done. I do thank Judy Toulour, even though she's not on here with us today. She has sat in on our board of directors. She's encountered similar situations with other user groups that have been in the same situation. And she gave us some great advice in real time when we were putting these resolutions together. So that was a big help.
Yes.
Save and share.
Okay, well, Stan, I'm going to turn it back to you and wait my turn, making this a Q&A session then.